The Depth of Silence, Overcoming the Yakima. It began on the sun-drenched sands of California when I was only 3 or 4. My father took me to the beach, and we stood together in the surf. I hung on to him, yet the waves knocked me down and swept over me. I was buried in water. My breath was gone. I was frightened, but my father only laughed. There was a lingering terror in my heart at the overpowering force of the waves, a seed of dread planted in the salt and foam. Years later, the Yakima River revived those unpleasant memories. My mother continually warned me against it, keeping fresh in my mind the details of each person who had drowned in its treacherous currents. She spoke of the river as a living thing, a hungry beast. To her, the water was a graveyard, and she ensured I saw it through her eyes, a place where life was easily extinguished by a single misstep. I decided the YMCA pool was the place to finally learn. It was safe, only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, and while it was 9 feet at the other, the drop was gradual. I got a pair of water wings and went to the pool. I hated to walk naked into it and show my skinny legs, but I subdued my pride. The water felt cold, but the tiled floor beneath was white and clean, promising a controlled environment far from the wild Yakima. Then came the day that changed everything. I was sitting on the edge of the pool, waiting for others to arrive. A big bruiser of a boy, probably 18 years old with thick hair on his chest, walked up. He looked at me and yelled, "Hi, Skinny! How'd you like to be ducked?" Without a moment's hesitation, he picked me up and tossed me into the deep end. I landed in a sitting position, swallowed water, and went at once to the bottom. I was frightened, but not yet out of my wits. On the way down, I made a plan. When my feet hit the bottom, I would make a big jump, come to the surface, lie flat on it, and paddle to the edge. But the way down seemed very long. Those 9 feet were more like 90, and before I touched bottom, my lungs were ready to burst. When my feet hit the tiles, I summoned all my strength and leaped upward. I came up slowly. I opened my eyes and saw nothing but water that had a dirty yellow tinge to it. I grew panicky. I reached up as if to grab a rope, and my hands clutched only at water. I was suffocating. I tried to yell, but no sound came out. Then my eyes and nose came out of the water, but not my mouth. I flailed at the surface, swallowed more water, and started down a second time. My legs felt paralyzed, stiff and rigid. Then all effort ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp, and a blackness swept over my brain. It wiped out fear. It wiped out terror. There was no more panic. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing to be afraid of. This is nice, to be carried gently, to float away in space. Tender arms around me, tender arms like mother's. Now I must go to sleep. I crossed to oblivion, and the curtain of life fell. I survived, but the fear stayed. It haunted me for years, ruining every fishing trip and every swim. Finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor. He put a belt around me. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley that ran on an overhead cable. He held onto the end of the rope, and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went under. After months of training, I was a swimmer, but I still wondered if I would be terror-stricken when I was alone in the pool. I went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire and dived off a dock at Triggs Island. I swam 2 miles across the lake. Only once did the terror return. When I was in the middle of the lake, I put my face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation returned in miniature. I laughed and said, "Well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me?" It fled, and I swam on. I had conquered the fear. I went to the Tioga to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to Meade Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of Worm Lake. The next morning, I stripped and leaped into the lake. I swam across to the other shore and back. I shouted with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned the echo. I had realized at last that in death there is peace. There is terror only in the fear of death. As Roosevelt said, all we have to fear is fear itself.